Anika Parker had exactly 47 minutes to decide whether to kill the man bleeding in her storage room. Not metaphorically, not in the heat of the moment way people say things they don't mean. Literally. She had the gun. She had the motive. She had 47 minutes before her daughter's school bus arrived at the corner of Harmony Street and 5th, where Anika would be waiting like she did every single day at 3:47 p.m., smiling like her world wasn't collapsing. The man's name was Kang Yoon-ho, and 1 week ago, he had offered her $4,000. Now he was zip-tied to the metal shelving unit behind cases of expired ramen she kept meaning to throw away, and Anika was learning that mercy had a very specific expiration date. If you're already hooked, hit that like button. This story goes places you won't expect. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. This story doesn't start with a gun. It starts the way most disasters start, with someone being kind when they should have known better. 3 weeks earlier, Anika's cash register was $200 short, and her manager, Mr. Chen, was the kind of man who believed in teaching lessons through pain. Not his pain, obviously. Other people's pain. Specifically, the pain of single mothers who couldn't afford to lose their jobs, but also couldn't explain where $200 went when the security cameras showed nothing, when the books showed nothing, when everything showed nothing except Anika's fingerprints on a register that somehow bled money.
You pay
You
it
pay it
back,
back, Mr. Chen
or
said,
you
his
find
Mandarin
another
accented English
job.
sharp enough to cut. Or you find new job. $200, 2 weeks of groceries, 1 month of Mina's after-school program, the only 3 hours a day when Anika could work without paying a babysitter more than she earned. $200 that Anika didn't take, didn't lose, didn't even understand how it vanished, but would still have to pay, because that's how the world worked when you were invisible. She was standing outside the store at 11:38 p.m., crying in the parking lot like a cliché, when the black Mercedes pulled up. 3 men got out. Expensive suits. The kind that whispered money rather than shouting it. The kind Anika recognized from growing up in Busan, from knowing what her father's friends wore when they came to collect debts, from understanding that some cars parked outside convenience stores weren't looking for snacks. They walked past her like she was part of the landscape. Invisible. Expected. Anika wiped her face, pulled her employee vest tighter, and followed them inside because her shift wasn't over, and Mr. Chen had cameras that would catch her crying in the parking lot instead of working. The tallest one, the one who moved like he'd been trained to hurt people efficiently, was buying cigarettes. Marlboro Reds. He paid with $100 bill, didn't wait for change, just nodded at Mr. Chen like they had an understanding that didn't include Anika. But the second man, the one with silver-rimmed glasses and a face that looked like it had been carved from something expensive and fragile, he looked at her. Really looked. Not the way men usually looked when they noticed her at all. Not cataloging, not dismissing, just seeing. The way you'd look at a painting in a museum that surprised you, that made you stop walking even though you'd planned to keep going. "You're upset," he said in Korean. Not a question. An observation delivered in the Seoul accent that marked him as educated, probably wealthy. Definitely not from around here. Anika's Korean was rusty, hadn't spoken it fluently since her father died when she was 16, since her mother remarried an American and moved them to Seattle and started pretending their first lives hadn't existed. But it came back now, automatic, the language of her childhood surfacing when she was too tired to perform in English. "I'm fine," she replied in Korean, the lie obvious to both of them. The man tilted his head slightly. "The register is short $200. Your manager thinks you stole it." "You didn't." Anika felt her blood turn cold. "How do you—" "Because I watched him take it." The man adjusted his glasses, casual, like he was commenting on the weather. 90 minutes ago. Skimmed it from the afternoon deposit. Blamed you because you're easy to blame. Single mother, immigrant, no one who'll fight for you." He paused. "Am I wrong?" Anika's hands started shaking, not from fear, from the specific rage that comes from being seen finally by someone who understood exactly how invisible she'd been made. "Why are you telling me this?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because you looked like you needed someone to see the truth. And because—" He pulled out a business card. Simple, cream-colored, expensive. "I think you and I might be able to help each other. Leave a comment below. Have you ever had someone see through a lie no one else noticed? Let me know. And if you're invested in where this is going, subscribe." This story gets darker before it gets lighter. His name was Kang Yoon Ho, and the business card had no company name. Just a phone number and an address in Koreatown that Anika recognized as the building where her father's old associates used to play hwatu and settle debts. She didn't call the number for 3 days. On day 4, Mr. Chen fired her anyway. Told her the $200 was just the start, that he'd found discrepancies going back months, that maybe she should be grateful he wasn't calling the police. Anika stood in the parking lot at 2 p.m., holding a box with her employee vest and a half-empty bottle of ibuprofen from the store's first aid kit, and did the math. Rent was due in 9 days. Mina's school fees in 14. The check engine light on her 2009 Civic had been on for 6 weeks, and the grinding noise when she braked was getting worse. She called the number. Yoon Ho answered on the second ring. "I was wondering how long it would take." "What kind of help are we talking about?" "The kind where I pay you $3,000 to let me store some boxes in your apartment for 2 weeks. The kind where you don't ask questions, don't look inside, and forget I exist once the 2 weeks are up." Anika closed her eyes. Her father had worked for men like this. She'd sworn, the day they buried him with a closed casket because of what those men had done when he tried to leave, that she'd never end up in this world. "What's in the boxes?" "I just told you not to ask questions." "I have a daughter." Yoon-ho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted, lost the casual edge. "I know. Mina, 7 years old. Maple Elementary, Mrs. Patterson's class. Loves strawberries, hates math, draws unicorns on everything." The bottom dropped out of Anika's stomach. "Are you threatening?" "No. Firm. Immediate. I'm telling you, I did my research. I don't work with people who have things to lose unless I know exactly what they're protecting. Your daughter is off limits. Always. That's not negotiable." He paused. "The boxes contain documents, financial records. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous. Just paperwork I need, stored somewhere my organization can't access for 2 weeks, while some transitions happen." "Your organization?" "Yes. Korean. Very." Anika thought about her father, about the closed casket, about how men like Yoon-ho used words like organization and transitions when they meant violence. $5,000, she said, "and I want it in cash before the boxes arrive." She could hear the smile in his voice. "You negotiate. Good. That means you're smart enough to survive this. $4,000. Half now, half when I pick them up." "Deal." The boxes arrived at midnight on a Tuesday, delivered by 2 men who didn't speak, didn't make eye contact, and moved like soldiers. 4 boxes, bankers' boxes, the kind lawyers use, sealed with packing tape, and numbered 1 through 4. Yoon-ho came with them, carrying the 4th box himself. He was different outside the convenience store. Still expensive, still controlled, but there was something else now. A tiredness around his eyes that Anika recognized from her own mirror. 2 weeks, he said, setting the box in her hall closet next to Mina's winter coats and the vacuum cleaner she'd bought at Goodwill. "I'll text you before I come to retrieve them. Don't open them. Don't move them. Don't tell anyone." "I know how this works." Yoon-ho studied her, and Anika felt exposed, like he could see through the performance of competence to the terror underneath. Your father worked for the Shangyongpa in Busan, mid-level enforcer, good at his job until he tried to go independent. They made an example of him. Anika's jaw tightened. You've been busy. I told you. I research. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, handed it to her. That's $2,000. You'll get the rest when this is done. And Anika. He waited until she met his eyes. I'm sorry about your father. For what it's worth, the man who gave that order died badly 3 years ago. Lung cancer. Very painful. Very slow. He left before she could ask if he'd helped the cancer along. If this story is hitting different than you expected, smash that subscribe button. We're just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Mina found the boxes on day 3. Anika had just gotten home from a job interview at a different convenience store. This one in Renton, 40 minutes from Mina's school. Impossible to make work with her schedule, but she'd applied anyway because rent was due in 6 days. Her daughter was sitting cross-legged in front of the hall closet, one of the boxes open, papers spread across the floor like fallen leaves. Anika's heart stopped. Mina. Her voice came out strangled. What are you doing? There's pictures of you, Mommy. Mina held up a photograph, black and white, surveillance quality. Anika outside the convenience store. Another one of her at Mina's school pickup. Another at the grocery store on Aurora. These are pretty, Mina continued, oblivious to her mother's panic. But some of them have other people. Is this Grandpa? Anika crossed the room in 3 steps, took the photo from her daughter's hands. It was her father. Younger, maybe 30, standing outside a restaurant in Busan with 2 other men. She recognized one of them from her childhood, her father's friend who'd come to his funeral and cried harder than anyone. Baby, you can't look at these. These are private. But they're in our closet. They're not ours. I'm holding them for someone. Anika started gathering papers, her hands shaking, trying to see what else was in the box without really looking because she'd promised not to look, and also because she was suddenly terrified of what she'd find. Financial records, Yoon-ho had said. But these weren't financial records. These were dossiers, surveillance photos, background checks, an entire box of information on people, including her father, including her. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't panic. I'm 10 minutes away. Yoon-ho arrived in 9. He didn't knock, just used a key Anika hadn't known he had, walked into her apartment like he owned it, and stopped when he saw Mina sitting on the couch, drawing unicorns on the back of one of the surveillance photos. That's my daughter, he said quietly. Anika's head snapped up. What? Yoon-ho wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Mina, specifically at the photo she was drawing on. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, with round cheeks and her father's eyes. That's Ha-eun, my daughter. She's 9 now. Lives with her mother in Seoul because I'm too dangerous to be around. I see her twice a year. Supervised visits. Always in public. That photo's from her 4th birthday party. I wasn't invited. He sat down heavily on Anika's second-hand couch, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked human, breakable. The boxes aren't financial records, Anika
No.
said.
They're
No,
leverage. Information
they're
on people in
leverage.
your
Information on
organization.
people in
Yes.
your
Why?
organization. Yes. Why store them here? Yoon-ho looked up at her, and Anika saw something in his face that made her breath catch. Not danger. Something worse. Hope. Because
Because
in
in
2
2
weeks,
weeks,
I'm
I'm
testifying
testifying
against the
against the
Cheongsong-pa.
Pa.
Every operation, every member, every crime I've witnessed or participated in over 15 years. And these boxes? He gestured at the papers scattered across her floor. These are my insurance. Proof that I kept records. Proof that I was planning this. Proof that if anything happens to me, if I die, or disappear, or suddenly recant, someone else has everything. And that someone is me. You, and a lawyer who doesn't know your name, and a federal prosecutor who thinks these boxes are in a safety deposit box in Portland. He smiled, grim. You're my contingency plan. The person no one in my organization would ever think to look at because you're invisible. Anika felt the ground shift beneath her feet. You used me. Yes. You researched my father, figured out I'd be desperate enough to take the money, vulnerable enough not to ask too many questions. Yes. And if your people find out, they'll kill you and your daughter to send me a message. Yoon-ho said it flatly, without apology. Which is why they won't find out. Why I'm picking these boxes up in 11 days and disappearing into federal protection, and you'll never see me again. You'll get your $2,000, and this will just be a weird 2 weeks you don't think about. Mina looked up from her drawing. Are you in trouble, mister? Yoon-ho's expression cracked. Just for a second. Yes. My mommy helps people in trouble. She's good at it. Drop a comment. Would you risk everything for someone you barely know? And if you're as emotionally wrecked as I am right now, subscribe. This story doesn't pull punches. They came for Yoon-ho on day 8. Anika was walking home from the bus stop with Mina, her daughter chattering about an art project involving entirely too much glitter, when she saw the car. Black sedan, tinted windows, parked across from her apartment with the engine running. Every instinct her father had trained into her, every survival skill she'd inherited from growing up adjacent to violence, screamed at her to turn around. She gripped Mina's hand tighter. Baby, we're going to Mrs. Kowalski's apartment. But we just got home. Now, Mina. They made it 3 steps before the car door opened. The man who got out wasn't anyone Anika recognized, but she knew the type. Thick neck, expensive watch, eyes that cataloged threats automatically. He smiled at her, pleasant. Wrong. Ms. Park, we need to talk about the boxes. Anika positioned herself between him and Mina. I don't know what you're talking about. Your friend Yoon-ho. He stored something with you. We'd like it back. I don't know anyone named. The man's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, looked back at Anika with something new in his expression. Not threat, calculation. Yoon-ho just walked into the federal building downtown, turned himself in 30 minutes early, which means... The man's smile widened. Whatever he stored with you just became very, very valuable. And you just became very, very interesting. He got back in the car, didn't threaten, didn't demand, just left, and somehow that was worse. Anika ran. She grabbed Mina, grabbed her purse, didn't grab anything else, and ran to Mrs. Kowalski's apartment, pounded on the door until her elderly neighbor opened it, concerned and confused, and Anika was already pushing Mina inside, already saying things she'd never planned to say. Please watch her. Just for a few hours. I'll explain later. Please. Mrs. Kowalski, who'd lived through Soviet occupation and understood running when she saw it, just nodded and pulled Mina inside. Anika went back to her apartment. The front door was open. Inside, 3 men were methodically destroying her life, couch cushions slashed, drawers emptied, her mattress overturned. They'd found the boxes, all 4 of them, stacked in her living room, already opened. One of the men looked up when she walked in. Older, maybe 60, with silver hair and glasses that reminded her of Yoon-ho. He held one of the surveillance photos delicately, like it might bite him. Ms. Park, I'm Director Lim. I believe you've been storing some items for one of my former employees. Former. The word landed like a stone. He said 2 weeks. Anika's voice was steady despite the terror making her hands shake. It's only been 8 days. Yes, well. Plans change. Yoon-ho decided to accelerate his timeline, which means we need to accelerate ours. Director Lim set the photo down carefully. These boxes contain information that could destroy my organization. Everything we've built over 40 years. And you've been sitting here with them. in this little apartment, probably not even understanding what you had. I didn't look. I believe you. You seem like someone who follows instructions. He smiled, and it was almost gentle. Which is why I'm going to give you new instructions. You're going to call Yunho's federal contact. You're going to tell them these boxes were stolen. You're going to say you don't know by who, but they're gone, and you're sorry, and you're scared. And if I don't? Director Lim pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. Mina, sitting in Mrs. Kowalski's living room, eating cookies, completely safe and utterly vulnerable. We have people watching your daughter. Not to hurt her, just to remind you what's at stake. You make the call, these boxes disappear, and you never hear from us again. You don't make the call. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Anika looked at the boxes, at the evidence that could destroy these men, that Yunho had risked everything to preserve. She thought about her father, about the closed casket, about how men like Director Lim built empires on the graves of people who tried to do the right thing. She thought about Mina, eating cookies, drawing unicorns, alive. "Give me the number," she said. But Anika Park hadn't survived 32 years of being invisible by being stupid. She made the call on speakerphone. Let Director Lim hear her tell the federal prosecutor that the boxes were gone, stolen. She was sorry. She was scared. Please don't arrest her for losing them. The prosecutor, a woman named Agent Reeves, asked careful questions. Too careful. Like she was reading from a script. Like she knew someone was listening. "Ms. Park, are you in danger right now?" "No." Anika met Director Lim's eyes. "I'm just scared." "Are you alone?" "Yes." "I see. Well, I'll need you to come downtown to make a formal statement. Can you do that tomorrow morning? Say, 9 a.m.? "Yes." "Good. Come to the federal building, 3rd floor. Ask for me specifically. Don't bring anyone with you." They hung up. Director Lim smiled. "Very good. You did well. My people will watch until tomorrow morning. Make sure you actually go downtown. Once you've made your statement, we're done. You'll never see us again." The men took the boxes, walked out of Anika's destroyed apartment like they'd just finished a business meeting, left her standing in the wreckage of her couch cushions and her daughter's scattered toys, and her own stupidity for ever thinking she could do this without consequences. Anika waited until they were gone, counted to 300, then pulled out the thing she'd hidden in her bra the moment she'd seen that black sedan. A thumb drive. Small, cheap. The kind you could buy at any office supply store for $12.99. The kind no one would notice if it went missing from a box of documents because who uses thumb drives anymore? Except Yunho had. Hidden inside the 4th box, taped to the underside of a file folder, labeled in neat handwriting, for Anika. Just in case. She'd found it when Mina had opened the boxes, had palmed it without thinking, without planning, just pure instinct saying, "Take this, hide this, you might need this." Now she plugged it into her laptop, the one luxury she'd kept from her marriage, the one thing she hadn't sold when money got tight. The drive opened. One folder. Inside, digital copies of everything, every photo, every document, every piece of evidence Yunho had collected, and a video file, dated yesterday. Anika clicked it. Yunho's face filled the screen. He looked tired, scared, human in a way he'd never been in person. "Anika, if you're watching this, something went wrong. Either I'm dead, or I'm in custody, and they got to the boxes before the feds did. Either way, you need to know the truth. Director Lim is my uncle, my father's brother. He's the one who ordered my father killed when I was 11. Took me in afterward, raised me, trained me, and I spent 20 years thinking he'd saved me. Didn't know the truth until 3 years ago when I found the kill order in his personal files. My own uncle. Family. The Cheongsongpa runs on family loyalty. On Jung, that Korean concept of bonds deeper than blood. And I'm about to destroy all of it because Young is supposed to work both ways, and Director Lim taught me it's just another leash. If something happens to me, if these boxes disappear, you have everything on that drive. Enough to finish what I started. Enough to make sure my daughter grows up in a world where her father didn't die for nothing. I'm sorry I involved you. I'm sorry I made you invisible in a different way by using you. But I did my research, Anika. I know you're stronger than you look. I know you're smarter than people assume. And I know you understand what it costs to survive in a world that treats you like you don't matter. Make them see you, even if it's just this once. The video ended. Anika sat in her destroyed apartment, holding a thumb drive worth more than her life, and did the math. She had 13 hours until she had to walk into the federal building. 13 hours to decide if she was going to hand over the drive, become a witness, put herself and Mina in danger for a man she barely knew who'd already used her once. Or she could destroy the drive. Tell Agent Reeves she had nothing. Disappear into invisibility again. Keep Mina safe. Except Director Lim had already seen her, already knew she existed. And men like him didn't forget witnesses, even ones who cooperated. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your daughter is very pretty. It would be terrible if something happened to her art class tomorrow. So many sharp scissors. So many heavy tables. Yoon-ho is coming to you in 10 minutes. I know about the gun in your closet. Finish the job. Anika felt something crystallize in her chest. Not fear. Rage. Pure, cold rage. Leave a comment below. What would you do? And hit subscribe, because what happens next will shock you. This now brings us back to the beginning. To 47 minutes. To Anika Park standing in the storage room, pointing a gun at Kang Yoon-ho, who wasn't supposed to be here because he was supposed to be in federal custody. Except he wasn't. He was zip-tied to a shelf in Anika's storage room, bleeding from a cut above his eyebrow, looking at her with something like pride. You're not going to shoot me, he said. Anika was holding her father's gun. A Daewoo K5, standard issue for Korean law enforcement before her father had stopped being anything standard. Well-maintained despite years of storage, the metal still gleaming dully in her apartment's cheap lighting. My father taught me to shoot when I was 12, Anika said quietly, checking the magazine with practiced ease. Still loaded. He said women in our world needed to know how to protect themselves because no one else would. Still, you wouldn't shoot me, Yoon-ho repeated. They threatened my daughter. I know, I got the same text. They're bluffing. How do you know? Because Director Lim doesn't kill children. It's the one line he doesn't cross. He'll threaten them, use them as leverage, but he won't actually hurt them. It's why Ha-yun's still alive. Yoon-ho shifted against the zip ties. He called me 6 hours ago, said the boxes were gone, my insurance was gone, and if I didn't recant my testimony, he'd hurt you and Mina. So I walked out of federal custody, told Agent Reeves I needed air. I didn't get far before I was attacked by my uncle's men. They did a number on me. Explains why my head is bleeding, but I escaped and came straight here because I knew you'd either run or you'd fight, and I needed to know which. I'm not surprised that my uncle has gotten to you. How did you know I'd be here? Because you're smart. You figured out the only place Director Lim's people wouldn't think to look for us is the one place you've already been exposed at, where they already destroyed. Your home. Anika lowered the gun slightly. The thumb drive. You left it for me. Insurance for my insurance. I told you I research. I knew you'd be smart enough to find it, to hide it, to use it. He paused. Do you still have it? Yes. Good. Because Agent Reeves is 3 minutes away. I texted her this location before you tied me up. She's bringing the full team. They're going to raid this place, arrest everyone, and you're going to give her that drive and testify to everything you've seen. And Mina? Already in protective custody. Agent Reeves picked her up from Mrs. Kowalski's 2 hours ago. She's safe. She's drawing pictures with a federal agent who has 3 daughters and knows how to braid hair. Anika felt her knees weaken. You planned this. All of it. No. I plan to do this alone. To keep you out of it. Yunho met her eyes. But you were already in it the moment I walked into that convenience store. And instead of running, instead of staying invisible, you palmed that drive. You figured out the play. You chose to be seen. So yeah, I adjusted the plan. Made you the hero instead of the victim. Because that's what you are, Anika. That's what you've always been. Sirens outside. Close. Getting closer. Anika untied him, watched him rub his wrists where the zip ties had cut circulation. Your uncle, Director Lim. He'll go to prison. They all will. And Ha-kun. His voice cracked. Ha-kun will grow up knowing her father wasn't just a gangster, that he tried to do one right thing. Will she forgive you? I don't know. But at least she'll have the chance to decide. Agent Reeves burst through the door with 6 federal agents, guns drawn, shouting commands. Anika raised her hands, still holding the gun she'd never intended to fire, and felt strangely calm. She'd been invisible for 32 years. Now, in a storage room of a convenience store where no one had ever bothered to learn her name, Anika Park was the most visible person in the room, and it felt like freedom. 3 months later, Anika sat in a courthouse watching Director Lim be sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. He looked old suddenly, diminished. All that power, all that violence, reduced to an elderly man in an orange jumpsuit being led away in handcuffs. Yoon-ho sat 3 rows behind her, supervised, still technically in custody until the trial ended. They didn't speak, weren't supposed to. But when he stood to leave, he caught her eye and nodded once. She nodded back. Outside the courthouse, Agent Reeves offered Anika and Mina witness protection. New names, new lives. A chance to disappear properly this time. Anika declined. I've been invisible my whole life, she said, holding Mina's hand. I think we're done hiding. They went home. Back to the apartment Anika had cleaned and repaired herself because she couldn't afford professionals. Back to the neighborhood where everyone knew what had happened, where Anika Park had stopped being invisible and become the woman who'd taken down the Cheongsongpa. Mina adapted better than Anika expected. Bragged to her classmates that her mom was basically a superhero. Drew pictures of federal agents and courtrooms and labeled them all in purple crayon. And Anika got a new job. Better pay, better hours. The prosecutor's office hired her as a victim advocate, helping other people navigate the legal system, making sure they stayed visible. Turned out being seen was a skill you could teach. 6 months after the sentencing, Anika got a letter. No return address, but she recognized the handwriting from the thumb drive label. Dear Anika, Ha-un asked about you. Wanted to know if the woman from the trial, the one who helped put her grandfather in prison, was scary or nice. I told her you were both. That the scariest people are often the nicest because they understand what it costs to survive. She wants to meet you someday. When she's older. When she's ready to understand why her father did what he did. I told her that would be up to you. Thank you for being seen. Thank you for seeing me. Anika folded the letter carefully, put it in a drawer with Mina's artwork and the business card Yunho had given her that first night, and went to make dinner. Ramen. The good kind, not the expired boxes from the convenience store. She set the table. Mina first, herself second. And she thought about Jung, about bonds deeper than blood, about how sometimes the family you choose is the family you save, and the family that saves you, all at once. If this story moved you, if Anika's journey felt real, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about invisible people becoming unforgettable. Comment below, what would you risk to be seen? Drop your thoughts. I read every single one. Next week, We're diving into another Korean romance that'll break your heart and put it back together. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to stay invisible.